Hello friends, welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and today on the podcast, why is everybody talking about Brazil right now? It's on social media, it's in the news media, it is in financial media, it's all over the place. If you're on our mailing list, you will be well across this subject. But a lot of people don't know what's going on. And so in today's episode, we're going to talk about why everybody's talking about Brazil in the coffee industry. And in coming episodes, we're going to talk about what it means for your business and what it means for us as an industry at large, as well as for consumers. Before we get started, I want to ask you, if you like the content that you hear today, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Consider sharing it with your friends as well. And I want to let you know about the Coffee Consultants Mastermind group that starts next week. That's the middle of August. If you are in North America, Central or South America, or in Australia, it fits perfectly for your time zones. If you are thinking about becoming a consultant in the coffee industry across all the different sectors, this may be the workshop for you. It goes for 6 weeks, 2 hours every week, $29.99 a week, and the results are guaranteed. By the end of it, you will know how to land your first customer. So if you're interested, head to mapitforward.org/group coaching, scroll down to the coffee consultant section and enter in group 2, starting in the middle of August. So what's going on with Brazil? If you're on the mailing list, as I said, you are already across this. But to recap, the weather patterns in Brazil before July were drought. And what that meant in the short scheme of things, the short story is that because of the drought that was happening in Brazil in 2020 and in earlier this year, Brazil was expecting a lower than normal yield in the number of bags of coffee that they would be able to ship in this harvest. But what happened on the 1st of July was that they received their first round of frost for July. Of course, they didn't know what was coming after that, but the frost that showed up on the 1st of July had only been equaled 4 other times in history. And so it was pretty bad. The producers that are experiencing this frost now that I've been communicating with had told me that their grandparents and their parents had told them about the frosts of 75 and 1992. And this spoke of that. So the 1st of July for 3 days, farmers in the southeastern region of Brazil got frost that was really devastating for many of the farms in that area. And these coffee growing regions hadn't experienced this other than, as I said, 4 other times in history. But then what happened in the middle of July is that they received a second round of frost on around the 20th of July that went for another couple of days. And the frost was a couple of degrees lower than in temperature than the frost from the beginning of the month. And then what happened was that frost came again for a third time. And that happened on the 29th and the 30th of July. And this was even colder again. Unfortunately, most of the frost each time hit around the same regions of Brazil. And so farms were hit once, twice, 3 times by frost that was devastating. Now, what does frost do and why is it so devastating? Frost is not just like cold air. Frost is colder, like severely cold air. And what it does is it gets into the coffee plant and it freezes any of the liquids that are inside the coffee tree. Now, the liquids are water and sap. And there's a lot of great information about this when Jonas Ferraresso came on the Map It Forward podcast and had an incredible conversation with me breaking all of this down. I encourage you to go and check that out. Now, the thing that happens with the frost is that when it hits and it hits the leaves and it freezes the water that's in the leaves, it then burns the leaves as well. And so after the frost is gone, you'd think a fire had gone through there and just hit the coffee trees. You can actually crumble the leaves in your hand. Now, why this is important is because coffee trees, like every other plant, need leaves to capture sunlight and create photosynthesis. Now, if the trees can't do that, they can't grow. This is the plant's energy source. So the plants are severely debilitated by not being able to capture energy from the sun and convert it to energy through photosynthesis. However, if the trees are old enough, what happens is that between the trunk and the branch, there's these little nodes in there and buds come out. Now, if buds have already formed at the time of the frost, they will then turn into other branches which will create new leaves, and perhaps the tree will be able to be salvaged. But when the second frost came around and it was a couple of degrees lower, what that meant was that cold was able to penetrate deeper into the tree. Now, trees that are mature have a lot of foliage around them. And what that meant was that they were able to protect the trunk of the tree. But once the first frost came and froze off all the leaves, what this meant was that the branch and the trunks were all exposed. So when the second frost came along, it went deep into the trunk of the plant, which is where a lot of the sap lives. Now, if you go to Jonas Ferraresso's Instagram, what you'll see is an example of what I'm about to explain. When the frost freezes the sap being more viscous than water expands. And as it expands, it splits the trunk of the tree. And Jonas has an example of a 12-year-old coffee plant that had been split and had gone into necrosis, which is death, because of this incident of the frost. Also, what happens is that you can have the frost hit the soil and freeze any moisture that's in the soil, and that attacks the root system. So if from the first frost, most of the leaves went, and the second frost, which was colder, you had the tree affected much deeper into its infrastructure, the third frost completely annihilated many, many farmers' plants. So from the first and the second frost, what people were saying was, this is kind of okay because, well, not okay. I misspoke there. For this harvest, they would be able to salvage whatever yield they had because at the time the frost hit, the trees had already fruited, and so the cherries were waiting to be picked. In coming episodes, we're going to talk about, well, if this harvest is okay, what does this frost really mean for our industry, and what does it mean for your small business? But more importantly, what does it mean for producers? And that's the really challenging thing that's ahead of us. And we'll deep dive into that in the coming episodes of the podcast. Once again, I implore you to check out the episode with Jonas Ferraresso. We will include links in the show notes. And please, folks, for those of you that think that you don't really need to know about these because you run a cafe and you don't buy green coffee, or you're just a barista or just a roaster, you just roast the coffee or just brew the coffee, I invite you to really think about the profession that you're in. Whether your profession is as a business owner or as a barista or a roaster that doesn't purchase green coffee. You engage in a supply chain, and not knowing what that supply chain is and how it functions and how things are traded within that supply chain and what it means for producers when things don't go as planned with this complex agricultural product, that has a flow-on effect to you. And if that's not a good enough reason for you to start looking into this, then nothing will be. But the other better reasons for this are that the livelihoods of the people who grow this agricultural product, their livelihoods are under threat. But we'll talk more about that in coming episodes. I hope you took a lot from this, and I hope that it piques your curiosity to want to get to know more. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever it is that you're listening to it or watching it. Have a great rest of your day.